Given our panic, each of us believed everyone was dead and thought he was the only who had managed to survive. Teachers, priests and pupils, everyone dead. One had the impression he was the only survivor at Buta and its surroundings.
This showed me Burundians are wounded people. Someone was saying wounded from head to toe.
At the wooden door, there was a group of assailants singing, "You've been misled. You've been misled. Idiots, get away from those criminals."
They were frightened. Some of them really felt their death. In fact, all the pupils who asked me questions that evening were all killed. The morning of April 30th, 1997, at 5:30, assailants entered by this door to attack the seminary. At that time, this wall did not exist. They were so numerous. They were dressed in military uniforms, and one of the soldiers who was out watching in the church corner saw many people arriving. He thought it was a reinforcement unit, but he was surprised because he hadn't been informed before. He then shot a dissuasion bullet and heard at the other side a member of the group giving the order of not shooting back. He immediately concluded that they were assailants. After that, he ran at all his speed by circumventing the church up to the military post where his friends were.
In fact, I had made a timetable for the night watching duty for the soldiers. I was naturally on my watch roll. We were 6 soldiers in total. As I was the one on duty at the moment of the attack, I decided to open fire after realizing there were many men carrying out the attack on us. Their commander told them not to reply. I realized how serious the situation was. One group headed to the dormitory. I then decided to move a bit back to warn my friends that were actually assaulted.
We had a military post of 11 soldiers. They were scattered that evening. Some of them were at the pastoral center and others at the primary school to protect refugees who were coming in big numbers. 6 soldiers came to back them in the evening. Assailants did not encounter many difficulties.
We saw a big group of men in military uniforms entering by the main gate. They began to shoot intensively as they headed to the pupils' dormitory. Before, they broke in small groups. One group began to shoot, targeting our post. There was an intensive exchange of fire as we retaliated, but they were by far superior to us in number. Some were shooting from the basket playground behind us, just behind the television room. We were overwhelmed as we were attacked from all sides. We were just helpless. Then we saw another group of men dressed as civilians with hats in a very big number. We were overwhelmingly dominating number compared to the men under my command to protect Buta Seminary.
They didn't face any resistance because our guarding unit was scattered, and the 6 soldiers taking care of the inside part of the priest residence were unable to resist, given the increasing number of assailants that their chief had seen. They preferred to flee because they were unable to resist. Here is the residence of the sacerdotal community. We were 5 that day, 4 priests and an intern seminarist at that period. We had hosted family members that evening, and they risked dying with us. The soldier who came running after he had seen assailants arrived here, where he found his 5 colleagues and told them, "Save yourselves if you can. We have been attacked." That's the time they decided to run to hiding places. The day before, he had ordered his colleagues not to remove their shoes in case it would happen to flee. But one of the soldiers disobeyed. When the others were joining their hiding places, he was putting them on. When he moved towards his peers, assailants shot him a bullet at his elbow. He, however, continued his way, and a second bullet reached him in the back. He staggered, made 2 steps, and fell down dead. We found him lying here between the 2 doors. He was already dead.
When I went out, the corpse was lying here, and they thought, oh, it was my body. That soldier was a real sacrifice for us.
At the beginning, doors were in wood. We decided to turn them in metallic material so that they can resist to any possible attack. We rehabilitated the house, except the ceiling, which we voluntarily omitted in order to recall the attack in the community. You can still see impacts of bullets. We preferred to keep it in that state to show it to the visitors. Soldiers who had fled towards that area, which I may call strategic, took their positions on those staircases and began to shoot in front of them in a bid to defend them with a lot of courage. They eagerly resisted against assailants who had pursued them and who had seen them coming in this direction. Those soldiers fired those assailants, and many of them died when attempting to reach rooms of priests. There was in front of them a corpse of one of their colleagues. They defended him as much as they defended priests and other persons who were there. Myself, I was at that place. In fact, assailants wanted to take control of that corpse so that they could remove from him his military uniform and his boots.
Those who assaulted us actually needed the dead body. They wanted to take it with them. Their commander had in fact told them he needed the body, which he said they couldn't leave there. I told my men that as the man has died, we had to defend his body so the rebels do not take it. We did our best and managed to prevent the assailants from taking away the body that we buried ourselves.
Another element to be mentioned: if assailants had reflected a bit, they held grenades in their hands, and if they had launched them, we would have perished. But God obstructed their intelligence, and were saved. It's through this door that I entered when I was coming from my room after I heard the first gunshot. I came here, opened this door and closed it again after me. However, a few minutes later, assailants followed me and started to shoot at the door. They triturated it for a few hours, shot the lock, but the more they shot the lock, the more it became hard to break it down. They tried to strike it, used stones, but the door could not be opened. It's the door which saved my life. It's in fact that way that I went to the store to hide myself.
Five minutes later, I noticed that many people were entering the house of the Abo Chancellor, like in a meal. They entered and then went out with clothes, with a package. I remember well a young boy who, a small gun in his hand, had the trousers of the Abo Chancellor, I think. He tried to put them on, but they were too big and gave them to another, a tall guy, and he's the one who took the trousers.
That's where I was, and it's since then that I saw assailants moving in the corridor towards the children's dormitory. I panicked, returned to hide myself. That's all I could do.
I had already seen that there was a corpse in front of my room, and when I realized that there were people who were entering and going out of the house of the Abo Chancellor, of course there was nothing else to do. That's why I had to pray. I don't know even how I did, but I prayed for him. May God receive your soul. In any case, I was with no doubt, really. I thought he had been killed. Given the atrocity that he had committed, I had already seen blood oozing through the wall of my room. All those were signs showing that I shouldn't have hope. No way.
I only went out of my hiding place around 11. I was accompanied by Abbot Joseph, who had come to look for me in the storeroom. He told me about the situation that was prevailing by that time. He told me that there were some advanced level pupils who had been killed, that the dormitory of the ordinary level pupils was on fire, that many pupils had suffered. I was saddened. When I left my hiding place, I was told that my pupils were dead, and I was sad. Sad to die. I wasn't expecting it. Together with Joseph, I discovered that the ordinary level dormitory was on fire. A lot of smoke was flying in the air. This was obviously hard for the pupils. In the residence of priests, there were glass debris everywhere. Father Joseph continued to brief me the situation. Many pupils had fled. Flows of refugees were coming. At that moment, persons were running in all the directions, bringing injured pupils. The governor of Burundi arrived by that time and was accompanied by the commander of the Burundi barrack. Their faces were broken up. They had seen corpses in the dormitory of advanced level pupils. Me too. I wasn't myself. I had been subject to a terrible attack by assailants for 5 hours. I had enormously suffered. I was dirty because the store where I had sought refuge was also dirty. From here, I could see inanimate bodies lying on the grass. When I walked towards them, I recognized the face of one of the pupils, Nizongiza Stanislas, who was seriously injured. I leaned towards him. He smiled at me and said, "They wanted to separate us, but we refused." This extraordinary sentence resuscitated me. He had of course seen my tense face. I was unhappy. But that sentence was for me like a glory cry. That young man revealed to me that despite the tragic situation, victory was on our side. I was reconforted. I went towards other pupils. A few meters away, a blooded body of Nzisabira Lenin was lying. His face was even covered with blood. He wanted to tell me something, but words could not get out. I tried without success to read through the movements of his lips. Maybe it was a farewell that he wanted to tell me, because just after a few moments he closed his eyes and I understood. I can't describe the state after the event. I stood up again and closed my eyes with hope to restore my spirit, because I knew what I had to do. I was conscious that it was just the beginning. From here, I walked with a steady step. I saw a corpse in front of the pupils' refectory. His name was Edith. I knelt down. I drew a cross sign on his face. I continued with despair. I had to continue. I proceeded then to the dormitory, where I saw the catastrophe. Dead pupils lying on the ground, others like a mountain of corpses. It was horrible to see.
The first to arrive was wearing a military uniform, had a weapon, and had a small notebook and a pen. I don't know what he was writing together with some of his security agents, and he said, "Don't attack them." Then he went out. Immediately after he left, it was difficult for me to guess how much time had gone, because in such period there isn't only fear, but also time concept doesn't have any value. A girl entered. She commanded, "Shoot!" It was the first time I heard such a word. They began to shoot everywhere, on the ground, up to where we were hiding. Then they stopped for a moment. I was with Jimmy. They said, "Leave your hiding places or we are going to use our machetes." When I heard that I was going to die after cutting me with the machete, I told myself, better die shot.
I recognized that it was a voice of a woman who commanded assault, apparently with a Kinyarwanda accent.
I stood up and talked to Jimmy. He told me, Me, I have already been touched by bullets. In fact, I touched him, felt blood on his back. He was bleeding and was hurt. I stood up and a young girl, member of the assailants, forced me to give her money. Another one asked me my ethnic group. I replied in the following: I'm a Burundian. He then seriously slapped me and I cried. I began to lose control.
The first sentence they said at the dormitory door was, they said, fire, right here. But the others said, pay attention, don't kill your people. And they came towards where we were hiding, that is under the beds. They commanded, now separate yourselves, Hutus on one side and the others on the other. As no one of us could leave his hiding place, they noticed we were all under the beds hiding. One of the rebels said, leave the beds, leave your beds. And someone called for a machete. We left our hiding places. They commanded us to separate again on an ethnic basis. But no one made a step. A pupil called Villerman said, hey, let's die like men. Let's die in dignity. A few seconds later, a grenade was fired. Me, I had the reflex of locating myself in the corner. After the grenade explosion, many bullets were shot from everywhere.
We remained calm. I didn't hear anything bad on the part of rebels. This is a sign that my friends died in Christ's peace. During all that time of agony, suffering, and interior joy, as we had succeeded to remain united, even though they had asked us to be separated. Me, I remained covered with blood, pretending as if I was dead, and when they turned back, because they were shooting even the dead, me, I remained there. I had been attained by 8 bullets. Then I felt a bit hot, and I was confused. And I told myself, am I dead or alive? It's later, when soldiers came, that I felt that I was still alive.
I saw a Pindait Kwayeko going to ask assailants to help him. The killer said, isn't it you who assassinated President Dadaye? And the P replied with a begging and welcoming tone, are we really among them? He told him, shut up. I had seen Alphonse, who died in front of me. He had been crushed like sand, and he had come to meet Gedeo. He died. The other one whom I saw is Gedeo, whose testimony recalls me the evening. He had said, the Lord beat me without delivering to death. Gedeo takes blood and washes his hands with it and says, O Mary, our mother, Why this spirit blood? He repeats 3 times the last words of Jesus. Forgive them, Lord, because they don't know what they are doing. He had a chain at the neck. He looked at me and said, Nicolas, be at my place. A word that I, up to now, ignored the true meaning. Then he sat and died.
The attack began at 5:35 a.m. exactly. Around 8 o'clock, I heard someone commanding, "Let's go and look for ammunition. We don't have any." Then they left. They were back 30 minutes later. On arrival, they fired on air. Everywhere they fired at any moving object. They returned again to the dormitory for the second time. That's when I started to hear some groaning, and then I heard a voice from the dormitory made by a pupil saying in Kirundi, "Oh God, have you abandoned us? Do you accept this? Look, we are dying out like birds."
We were attacked 3 times. For the first time as they arrived in the dormitory. They shot a lot until the bullets got finished. And they went to seek other bullets, and they came to shoot with so much force. After the second time of shooting, they climbed up a hill. I was hidden beneath my bed. Then I slowly came out, and I could see others also coming out. Then they started to wrap with rope in an effort to stop bleeding, the hemorrhage. Some died right away. Others were in agony. Because of the sunshine, killers could watch movements in the dormitory from the hill. We saw them sloping down the mountain. Then I called, "Help me," so that they cannot find me here. All of us wanted to save our lives. Whoever was able either slept, stood, or ran away. Then my friends Hutus and Tutsi, Manirambona Pastor and Edward carried me. When we reached the stairs, I failed to stand. They both took me by the armpits. Slowly, but when we reached down the building, we got trapped. The assailants had reached us. I could hear others moving to the toilets. Pastor took off his t-shirt and fastened the rope over my wound because other ropes were not holding anymore. He remained with a naked chest. Then he saw them approaching to shoot him because they were already at the basketball playground. Then they took me to the toilets where I hid. The third phase of shooting found me in the toilets. That's when they killed the remaining pupils in the dormitory.
The first victim with whom my classmate Gilbert and I provided the first aid is Ndaitwaikopi, who unfortunately later died. We then saved many people because many of them were in need of help and called us. Among those people, there are some who were rescued, namely Nzisabira Leonidas, Mazarahisha Daniel, and Serge Ndikurio. We made our school representative, Rusimba Migera Jolik, who was seriously injured, lie on a mattress put on the ground, and lifted a bed above, and let the bed sheets spread over the bed just to hide him. Assailants heard the movement and noise made by beds that were pushing just to save other students. At that moment, some students who were supposed to come to help other students couldn't come back to the dormitory. They remained outside, hiding either in the toilet, in the garage, or elsewhere. That was the moment of separation, which was very hard.
Between the second and the third attack, I managed to go out and see, because I had noticed that there was no one here. That's why I noticed that there was a lot of wounded pupils. There were pupils carrying the fellows to the toilet in order to hide them. As I was about to assist and save them, we immediately heard them coming back. Since they came shooting again, we rushed to our hiding places, and some pupils had managed to hide in the toilets.
Assailants noticed that people in the dormitory were moving. Then they came down the mountain, and we saw them. Then we decided to run away again. However, there are some who decide again to remain under the beds. But me, I decided to run away. I borrowed sandals and ran in the direction where the ordinary level pupils had fled.
Even though I was shot, laying beneath the bed, I could hear. I saw an assailant running after a pupil, but the dormitory had only one gate, and the pupil reached a wall with no way out and put his chest against the wall. If the assailant wanted to shoot him, he would have shot him dead immediately. But he asked him, "Do you have money?" "I don't have any," and said, "Hide yourself. If you are killed, don't say it's me. You are lucky I'm a Christian." The rebel made sure the pupil had found a hiding place before he went. He had even noticed that the pupil was a Tutsi boy, Fabrice of the 5th form, I believe. When he came back, he saw us. We were even talking, but did no harm to us and just passed by. We thought he was among people abducted and forced to shoot. Otherwise, he was a real Christian.
Assailants ordered again, "Shoot." What we did was to plunge into the bloodshed that where we have hidden. I leaned against the wall and kept quiet, but at that moment we were watching blood flowing. Assailants could notice that we were still alive. Then I sat down and I saw students agonizing. Others have died. It was during that moment that I was shot by a female assailant. She wanted to shoot at my forehead, but I escaped. Bullets went through walls and came back to my ribs. I don't know the exact number of bullets, but they were at least 6 or 8 bullets.
Anytime they mopped the dormitory, the dormitory had an opening which allowed water to leak through the wall to penetrate in my room. Then, instead of water, I saw blood. I began to notice that it was terrible. Later, the situation became relatively calm. and I heard something passing in front of my window. I don't know whether it was an arm, I don't know. It was something very heavy. Then there was someone who stood against my window. I was frightened, and he was commanding in Kiswahili. He was coordinating the entire situation. There were many people there.
It wasn't difficult to say, look, I'm a Hutu, let the others go. Or if you are looking for Tutsis, let the others go. It was easy to say it. It's really a simple gesture. But that simple gesture didn't take place for the community's sake, for the country's sake, for the gospel's sake. They are witnesses, that's all. If there was one who was dislocated from the group, and say, I'm a Hutu, for instance, if there was one who detached himself from the group, he had automatically to show his colleagues, his fellows, look, I live next to that one, I discuss with that one. He would have been a betrayer. But this didn't happen. Everyone kept their mouth shut. We are united. It's extraordinary. Extraordinary. In front of a gun cannon, in front of a grenade, in front of a machete doing this. This is the strength of the gospel, the strength of faith.
I think this has been a hazard, a no-fool hazard, which has simply made casualties on the side of pupils only. It's no fool hazard. First, the Chancellor himself, who was to be killed, doesn't believe how it happened. There are teachers, as he has said. The last who entered didn't close the door. And when they smashed the other door leading to the sitting room of the singles' house, they got in, but thought that the teachers were already gone. At my house, what happened is a hazard. In the pupils' dormitories, supervisors slept in the rooms located in those dormitories. They had closed them, but there was a small window giving access to the dormitory to control their movements. They fired at the beds through that window, but by chance they didn't fire a grenade inside. I think that it was a terrible hazard. The deaths were only pupils.
After I opened the dormitory door of the advanced level pupils, I saw a mountain of corpses. Horrified, I immediately closed my eyes. I made a half-turn and went to my office to weep the death of my sons. It was catastrophic. After counting, we noticed that the total of those who died were 40. 3 young pupils of 6th form of the lower cycle, 16 3rd form pupils, 11 2nd form pupils, 10 1st form pupils. Those are the human casualties that we counted. There were obviously material damages. That day, the dormitory of the ordinary level pupils caught fire because they fired the building when pupils were going downstairs, and half the big building was burnt. The day before the attack was in fact very tense, because the pupils were frightened, as well as their teachers. Most pupils had a presentiment of death. When I met them in the evening, some pupils asked me questions, and I felt that they were very frightened. I remember, for instance, Longin, who asked me the following question: Mr. Abbott, do you think that if you place 2 soldiers at the beginning of the dormitory staircases, as you say, we will be safe? Desiré Ndagijimana, who rarely asked questions in public, stood up and asked me, Mr. Abbott, is it true that assailants wrote to you warning that they would attack us? No doubt that he had a presentiment of death. Basile had a presentiment of death. Many pupils had prayed in the course of the daytime. They had told their fellows, do you know the better way to prepare oneself to death? Is to read the Bible, for instance. They were saying it laughingly, but they had a presentiment of death. On the contrary, I was feeling an inner endless joy that I could not explain. I had other presentiments than death. The proof is that I did not die.
First and foremost, the pupils of the first class didn't community works that afternoon. We did obligatory revision. During that revision, we took that opportunity to hold a meeting in the classroom. We had sent delegates to the rector for much information, and they came back and they told us the rector was to look for more troops to reinforce the post. We remained worried and once again asked them. And we requested the delegates to go and see the rector, and he would tell them that he was to go back to Burundi and consult the military for the second time. Thereafter, the delegates gave us the information, and we continued to check if the military was present. But as we could not see them, we had to send our delegates to ask if the rector would not convene another meeting.
That meeting, which began at 9 p.m., endlessly lasted. I had to stop it because pupils were asking me questions, with Basile's last question saying, Mr. Abbott, tell us what to do when assailants break out in the dormitory. I had reassured them, but I didn't actually convince them. Then I said, listen, Basile, I'll be there when assailants attack. I will tell you what to do. Then I closed the meeting. I said a prayer, blessed them with emotions, without, of course, knowing that I won't see the majority of them again. I closed the meeting, which was finally difficult. The mood was very, very tense. I felt that they were frightened. They had a presentiment of their death, while me, no, the mood was tense, very, very tense.
At that meeting, pupils were very sad. We were afraid at that moment because we felt an attack was imminent. We asked permission from the rector to mount a night watch service and carry out night patrols, because everyone was afraid to go to bed, as continued gunshots were heard in areas surrounding our schools.
The main concern was to keep pupils calm so that they couldn't be dispersed for fear or disorganization. The Chancellor wanted to organize them and give the task to soldiers because he was told they would come. I myself asked so many questions before going to the meeting, notably on how we could protect ourselves if they passed by stairs, which was the only one way out.
From Burundi military barrack, where he had gone to inform the administration and the military officials, the Chancellor tried to comfort and cheer us up. But most of the pupils who asked the questions, I don't know by which coincidence, were all killed, such as Thierry and Basile, who asked the questions which were difficult, expressing fear, were just saying some of their last words.
The meeting with all seminary pupils took place at 9 p.m. I was coming from Burundi. I had spent all the day looking for help, and I wanted to tell them my hope that we wouldn't be attacked. It was a personal conviction. Everything was still hidden up to that day. Everyone was frightened, but me, I wasn't frightened whatsoever. I went to tell those pupils, look, you will be protected. I saw soldiers coming towards the seminary around 5:30. I have met on the way to Buta 6 trucks full of soldiers. Don't be afraid. That was the main message I wanted to tell them. But they were afraid. Some of them really had a presentiment of death. In fact, all those who asked questions that evening died, except Innocent and the pupils' representative. The latter were not killed, but they asked me questions, I think, earlier in my office.
Soldiers were coming from Ngozi. I couldn't tell they were soldiers as they had handkerchiefs on their head. I first saw them crossing Gigi River Bridge and I overtook them here at Kwitaba as they were stopped by the commander of Bururi Barrack. They were told to spend the night at Bururi instead of continuing their way to Buta. I drove the car to school, but as I passed at the canteen, people told me that the security situation was precarious, that some people had even fled from Monini for security. I then told the bar manager to close and we all left.
I was not satisfied by the outcome of the meeting, given the fact that our dormitory had only one gate. I knew that once we were attacked, no one would survive. After the meeting, we went to the chapel to pray as usual. There were a lot of discussions among pupils as we got out from the meeting. But once we reached near the chapel, everyone was silent, a deep silence. From the chapel, we headed to the dormitory and organized ourselves separately. The senior cycle pupils decided to mount a night watch. 2 pupils were to be watching, while others were sleeping.
A crucial moment that remains graven on my memory is when we were having dinner. Some guys like Sebastian were saying, "Please, can you serve me up just a little piece of cassava bread, because it might be my very last." The other one is Eloi, who said to me, "Goodbye, perhaps tomorrow we'll be no more alive." Still another crucial moment, that is when Ildefonse came to me and suggested that we go to sing together in an effort not to give in to fear.
Since unity had been more or less consolidated or fed, we were thinking that even if an attack was to take place, as we are united at the seminary, there would be no casualties. Perhaps assailants, combatants, when they come, would target other schools, for instance Kiremba, Rutovu or elsewhere where violence had been reported earlier. It was naive on our part, as you may realize.
What urged pupils not to separate before the gun is because they had received conduct, preparing them to be courageous, united. For the 4 years of the crisis, we had tried to tell those children that they were first Burundians, Christians and seminarists. We had concretized this speech of unity by concrete actions. It was sport, manual works, prayer, intellectual activities, dancing, conferences and other activities which completed the dialogue that we had every evening to discuss the situation with all frankness, because we had to tell them the truth in order to be healed.
As far as education quality is concerned, Buta Seminary was not different from other lycees. It was just like in all other schools countrywide. But what was a bit exceptional with our school was the way we resembled each other, particularly cultural activities, folk dances such as drums, umuyebe, indore, umudemera, well, cultural performances. There was also the spiritual education, such as retreats at some crucial moments, like the period preceding Christmas, fasting, but also retreat for senior pupils. Those retreats constituted crucial moments which contributed in uniting us. The seminary was a united community. This brotherhood was fed by those moments, such prayer times, together at Catholic Action Club's activities.
When the occasion came, in order to concretize that unity they had in their hearts, in front of the gun they said, "No, we will not separate." But I should also say, thanks to God.
It had been reported earlier on that in some other schools people fought, killed one another, which was not the case here. From time to time, my son used to make a short visit home. After playing with other boys on their playground over there, he would cross that river, Siguvyaye, and come to tell me, "Dad, what is happening in other schools? Parents should not bring it at our school." Tutsis and Hutus, we are all together as one. Those children had got a good education, really. And they had educators who seemingly had a common understanding of their mission. If Hutu and Tutsi educators had suspected each other, there would have been a tragedy here at school.
It happened one day, Pupils from the Hutu ethnic community attempted to drop studies and flee. Upon hearing reports on violence by means of grenades and machetes between the two communities at different schools, they decided to run away before it was too late. So one morning, they wanted to go. I personally stopped them before that small shop carrying the national label. They were leaving. They were just leaving without saying anything whatsoever. I personally persuaded them to come back and told my colleagues. From that moment, we began to increase supervision. We began to take the matter very seriously. First with dialogue, close supervision, a regular follow-up of pupils during sport activities, and particularly swimming. At that time, our swimming pool was still operational. Either we played football, volleyball, basketball, etc. That's how we actually contributed, and the pupils could realize that we were with them.
We were taught that if someone gave a blow to his brother, he would automatically be fired because there was no sound reason to hurt a friend. And in class, we would discuss, just for humor, on ethnic issues or any other things. We could imagine that this was preparing us for a harmonious cohesion. And we were particularly discussing about information aired on radios. I must reckon it was a great action to keep us informed. We are updated on all the happenings in the countries from which we would draw lessons. The rector used to tell us that hatred doesn't build people's life. Try to draw lessons from all these happenings to get united. As adults, they had experience from the 1972 event or even before.
Like other staff members at the seminary, I participated in the education through dialogue, games, but also through our daily duty of teaching and evaluation, obviously, as well as through a permanent discussion with the pupils. I consider the great contribution was achieved by Abbot Chancellor Zachary, who every evening held a discussion with pupils on the situation prevailing in the region. We made sure nothing was hidden to pupils so that they know the truth.
Communication was an important tool for us because the absence of communication gives room to rumor, and rumor usually destroys. When killing was reported here and there, the rector would bring us together with teachers to brief us on the situation, because a lot of rumor, false information was spread. The aim of the rector was to inform us so we could discuss on how to behave as a united seminary community. Communication was a very important tool in a family framework where a father informs and gives guidance for a good and transparent community life.
Et je pense que si tous les éducateurs des écoles ici
I think that if all educators in our country behaved like ours,
je crois que
Burundi would not have experienced such a serious crisis,
aussi grand parce que
because there were cases of educators who reportedly handed the pupil to murderers. Others were divided, grenade blasts reported here and there in schools, people carrying knives in the dormitory.
et le port de couteaux dans les dortoirs, alors que certains avaient peur, certains éducateurs
While
avaient
some
peur.
educators were afraid, some others were just indifferent to those killings.
Je dois dire que même
I also must say the rebellion movement was reinforced because of those grenade blasts. As attack survivors, we joined the rebellion. It is that fear which got developed and amplified, because when we were attacked, they said, "We too, we have given up studies, and you are studying." Here's the jealousy, the anger. That's it.
jalousie, c'était colère. Voilà.
À l'entrée du dortoir, j'ai reconnu pas mal de visages.
At the dormitory gate,
Parmi lesquels figuraient
I
ces
could
hommes
recognize some faces. Mostly some people we tried to rescue, such as Pinda Etwaeko,
mais aussi Habarugira Wilhelm,
Wileman Habarugira,
Leonidas,
Leonidas Gatabazi,
bien d'autres.
and many others.
Très difficile
The situation was
de façon
too hard
on pouvait
to understand.
avancer très
One could hardly move.
une certaine,
We feel emotions,
je dirais,
and the emotions were
émotion
very high, and one could
entraînée à
easily
tomber.
collapse.
Ce qui m'a conduit à
I had to stop for a while
un long moment
before stepping further.
Bon, après, j'ai pu résister et avancer, faire le tour du dortoir.
Afterwards, I managed to resist and I walked around the dormitory. I recognized some of my fellows' faces.
Je suis descendu et on a
Then I walked downstairs and went to Burundi Chief Town, where I assisted the wounded people.
été accueilli là-bas, mais aussi pour aller assister ceux qui étaient déjà blessés.
The morning started immediately when we went out of hiding places, and after we noticed that our pupils had died, we had immediately organized a meeting to look at what we could do. It was the beginning of the morning, in my opinion. Some of them went to look for injured pupils or corpses in the bush. Others accompanied the injured to the hospital. We immediately started to prepare food for the injured and refugees who were coming in a big number. And in the evening we had to clean the dead. A very tough work. Many were unrecognizable. We had to pay a lot of attention. There was neither electricity nor water. It was a hard morning, but it ended well. The funerals took place 2 days after. We were lucky enough, as the parents accepted that their children be buried together here. This was once again an illustration of the unity that those children had built at the time of death. Parents also followed the good example.
I personally mourned the death of my brothers who were innocently killed. After the attack, I left my hiding around 4 p.m. I was deeply affected that nothing could interest me for the following couple of weeks or so. Food was tasteless to me, and sometimes I could feel the smell of grenades blast, bullet powder, and blood. In any case, I was feeling bad. I was deeply affected. Even now, I feel the pain whenever I think of that day. But in other respect, I consider this as a work of God, both from those who perished and us who survived. Indeed, if we were divided, I don't think anyone would have survived from the attack. For instance, if we had broken into groups on an ethnic basis, perhaps on the turn, soldiers would have come and killed those who had betrayed their fellows.
We were shocked by what was reported on foreign medias, according to which there was a cache of weapons at the seminary, that the rebels attacked us because we were armed, and that the pupils were armed. They even went further to say that we are the ones who provoked them. It was horrible to hear at the time. We were beginning a difficult period after losing 40 innocent pupils. Later on, the truth was correctly said. Today, everyone knows that our children were calmly sleeping, that they were found in the dormitory, but mostly that they were not armed, and that there was no weapons cache at the seminary.
Those who are saying that there were weapons belonging to soldiers, that they weren't pupils, actually this is an insult. I cannot talk about our children being trained at weapons. I can say that 100%, about 90% of them hadn't any information on weapons. Therefore, hearing that they attacked Buta military barrack, that's strange. I tell you, even though it was during crisis, soldiers in charge of the post were only 6.
It was reported that the children were victims of the weapons stored at the seminary, but we are surprised by the fact that the rebels never took time to ask where those weapons were hidden. Instead, they killed the children after students refused to split into groups. They told the Hutu to keep on one side and the Tutsi another side. After those children had refused to separate, the assailants didn't search for weapons, but instead they started killing them. One can conclude that they wanted Hutu to be separated from Tutsi so that they ran away with them. And if Tutsi were separated from Hutu, they would have been killed all. Tragedy would therefore have taken place here in Burundi.
They haven't been to the seminary food store. They didn't kill our cows, our sheep, our pigs. No, they went back like that. They probably had that recommendation to prove that here at the seminary, unity is not there. However, they were disappointed. That's why they began to kill our children. They possibly wanted to show in the eyes of the international community that unity in Burundi was a dream and that it will never be in place. Our kids were then martyrs for that unity. They have been our witnesses. That's why we should come back to this attitude, to the words that they left to us. That's it.
kubera yuko nari nsanzwe ndongoye zone nari maze iminsi numva.
As I was chef de zone, I had heard rumors according to which there was going to be an attack some unknown day.
bivuga ko umunsi utazwi tuzohava dutegwa nta cyiyumviro na kimwe.
No one can imagine some teachers, priests, or any other neighbor was involved in the attack.
yoba yaragize uruhara muri ivyo bintu. N'ikimenyamenya n'icyorohereza.
As a matter of fact, the murderers of those pupils reached my home too. I wasn't killed thanks to God.
abo babishe baranshikiriye n'Imana gusa yakinze sinashoboye gupfa ariko kubera ko nabonye nyene vyagenze.
But since I witnessed the killings, I cannot suspect any educators of involvement whatsoever in the attack because I was in the neighborhood. They were attacked, and so was I. They even looted some of my properties. I was lucky enough they didn't find any document on me, because had they found any document identifying myself as chef de zone, I wonder what would have happened to me. But God protected me. That's why I can testify that we were both attacked, even though they survived. They were targeted like those pupils who died, but God simply preserved their lives.
After the burial ceremony, we observed an extraordinary solidarity in and around Buta. As most of the pupils were dead or injured, people from the areas surrounding our school, despite their various problems, came to give us a hand to work in our fields and harvests. We observed solidarity from our colleagues who came in a big number to assist us. Some were bringing mattresses, others beds, some others gave us a hand in various ways. We also recorded solidarity from church organizations. Buta has been an opportunity to make concrete the unity that we were finally carrying within our hearts. In conformity with the Burundian tradition, after the death of our children, we organized a second and last post-burial party. Many people attended that party, including administration officials and church leaders. A lot of messages appealing for solidarity were delivered. Here, once again, Burundians proved that the Buta symbol was meaningful enough for them. This showed that they want to live in unity that the killed pupils had built. My view is that Burundians have drawn a lesson from the April 30th event at Buta.
We are lucky to have got in our heart forgiveness from God. I had met those rebels at their assembly area in Nyanzalak. When they came to Nyanzalak parish, where I was working as an intern, the rebels were given a warm welcome. I was the parish economist manager. I would receive them, especially the chiefs, as they came to pay a visit. That was at the beginning of the reintegration process of former combatants. As far as I'm concerned, I had no intention to revenge. Instead, I was filled with joy to welcome friends who were boasting for what they had done. I was sympathizing with them as they said, "We killed, we shot dead 40 pupils at Buta Seminary. We are brave." I really had compassion for them. And that leads me to think we can really move forward in the process of reconciliation because it is possible. I experienced it with the combatants who came to the parish from their assembly site.
We can learn a nice lesson. Is that unity is possible in our country. We know that when the ethnic crisis broke out in 1965, some Burundians sacrificed their lives, died to save the lives of other people from different ethnic groups, and who were being hunted for their ethnic belongings. Those examples are kept in our memories. It was the same case in 1972. There were a lot of victims. We know there were many innocent victims who died while trying to save others. Same case in 1993, when broke out this war, which has not yet ended, after the assassination of President Dadaye. We have produced too many Holocausts, 50 years of civil war. That's too much. Those innocent children who finally had to give a lesson, that's too much. Burundians should understand this. I hope these are the last victims of our stupidities. One more victim would be too much. Those children have given out their lives so that we stop hating one another without any sound reason.
We are all forgiven sinners, and we also have to forgive others. I really realized this with Gedeon, who was wounded, but said, "Forgive them as they don't know what they are doing." And thanks to his message, I never have a thought of the attack, nor be tempted to take revenge. In my mind, my soul, I have found peace. Even though I have friends among those who attacked us, I have never been attempting to talk it over with them. But in other cases, those who survived, who owe our little life to God, have no alarming case of infirmity. We are enjoying good health like others.
That day I had a special grace, the grace of mercy, almost at the same minute. As I was thinking the assailants had managed to break the door of my room where I was hiding, I thought one of them was going to pull me out of the room to kill me. From there I tried to pray, but without success. I couldn't utter a single word. Then I heard a voice from my heart, a very clear voice, telling me, "If you want to do something, first forgive those who are breaking in your room. They are also my sons." At that very moment I felt I had received a special gift, a grace which was filling all my body. I cannot describe the situation I was experiencing. I just felt I had recovered from all my hatred, that I had forgiven the murderers of my children and myself. I deeply believe, and that's my personal opinion, that Burundians can also forgive. I hope that the real reconciliation will soon have begun. When the thoroughest truth will have been said, we will begin to forgive one another. And it's possible that Burundians forgive each other, so that there is no civil war anymore. Let's pray for it. Let's all be transformed. Of course, it will not be an easy task, as there are many deep injuries in our hearts. Those mass graves are scary. When someone doesn't know where his father has been buried, or his mother, or his brother, this leaves a big empty hole in one's heart for very long. But we shouldn't lose courage. Pardon is possible. It will not be possible to forget what happened to our country, but it will be possible to forgive. We will no longer take a weapon to kill someone because simply he's from a different ethnic group from yours, or because you allege his parents killed your relatives. For me, such period is over.
When I hear children playing around and singing, I feel my son Kanezere is among them. Even now, there are days when people come around and spend a night praying on every 12th day of each month. I join them if I happen to be home. The prayer goes right to my heart, and I am very thankful that our kids died but in dignity. I also appreciate the idea of having buried our children here and having erected a church which brings people together.
This represents the 40 young martyrs. On the right side, I can for instance see Leonidas Gatabazi, Arakaza Jean-Thierry, Kanani Jean-Marie, Jimmy Prudence Murergua, Joseph, Prosper, Emery, etc. This Brotherhood Martyrs Sanctuary symbolizes a place of memory, a place for remembrance, but above all, an oasis for peace. When you come here, you feel in peace. Those children died for the sake of peace, and they got it. When you come here, you feel in peace. This place reminds us of those innocent children who died for the sake of peace and brotherhood, therefore for unity among Burundians. As for us Christians, this place reminds us of love. Like the Christ, they died offering their lives for love.
Nous avons fait un petit concours pour essayer de...
Pupils had a drawing contest, for the rector had planned to erect a sanctuary where he would put statues which he would have imported from abroad. A pilgrimage venue, I believe, where people would come to pray, and that was done. He didn't know that such events would have happened. Those statues have turned to be my classmates, those 40 seminarists who passed away for unity and brotherhood. This place has become a venue for prayer, pilgrimage, retreats. We have people from all corners of the country for sharing and forgiveness, because we have very many testimonies of people who come to the sanctuary of Buta and who say, we have to forgive our enemies, as the 40 seminarists did.
According to me, the Brotherhood Sanctuary of Martyrs doesn't stand for sadness, because if it were sadness, we couldn't come back, and we could not recommend other people to visit that place. When a person has missed his beloved because of death, it is a sad moment, but what we take into account is their bravery, the brotherhood they displayed, as well as the unity they kept. That's what makes us happy. Furthermore, bereaved parents decided to bury their children in the same sanctuary.
It's definitely a gathering place. The youth come from all the dioceses, sometimes from all over the country, come and they can say they have received something precious from this place. This reminds us that the ideal for the entire humanity is to stand together as one, to live in unity. That ideal is not for Burundians only. When I see foreigners coming to pray here, coming to bow down here before the graves of our children, they are moved by emotions, deeply moved by the gesture of the children. This reminds them that they should also build unity in their countries. It's unity which makes the beauty of a unified humanity. At least for Christians, the Christ wanted us to become a reconciled humanity, because he died for each man, mostly sinners. That's what this place also reminds us of. It symbolizes unity, love, and joy.